Picture this. It's midnight. Your project is due in 6 hours, and your computer just decided, without asking you, that now is the perfect time to install an update. You didn't click anything. You didn't get a choice. 1 second you're working, and the next, your screen goes dark and a countdown appears, telling you your machine will restart whether you like it or not. If that sentence made your stomach drop, you already know exactly where this story is going, and by the end of it, you might be questioning something you've never questioned before. Whether the operating system you've trusted for years actually works for you or just works on you. If you're new to Nolan Tech, go ahead and subscribe and tap that notification bell because we put out videos like this all the time to help you stay ahead of what's actually happening in tech instead of what the marketing wants you to believe. I need to be upfront about something. A year ago, if you told me I'd be making a video like this, I would have laughed you out of the room. I was the guy defending Windows in every comment section that dared criticize it. I told people Linux was for basement dwellers who liked typing commands for fun. I'd been on Windows since I was a teenager, through every version you can name, and I knew that operating system inside and out. Every hidden menu, every registry trick, every keyboard shortcut. I wasn't just comfortable with Windows, I was proud of how well I knew it. So when I say I switched away from it entirely, I want you to understand that's not a small thing for someone like me. Something had to break first. That something happened on an ordinary weeknight earlier this year. I was deep into a video project, hours of rendering already logged, deadline breathing down my neck. The progress bar was crawling toward the finish line when a notification slid in from the corner of my screen. My PC needed to restart to finish installing updates, and it gave me a window to delay it. I clicked delay, obviously. Who wouldn't? Then another notification appeared telling me the restart was now locked in for 2 a.m. regardless of what I wanted. I dove into the settings menu like a man possessed, hunting for the option to actually stop this. I tried the built-in pause feature, which capped out at a few weeks, and still demanded I install the very update I was trying to avoid. I dug into background services, hoping to shut the whole update process down manually. I edited policy settings I probably shouldn't have touched. None of it mattered. At 2 a.m, my computer restarted anyway. My render vanished with it, and I woke up the next day to find a brand new lock screen with a mountain photo I never picked, and a tiny ad in the corner pitching me on subscription features I had zero interest in. That was the moment something cracked. Not because losing a render is the end of the world, but because it forced me to actually sit with a question I'd been avoiding. Whose computer is this, really? I built this machine piece by piece. I paid for every component. I paid for the license. And yet I couldn't even decide when it would turn itself off and on again. Still, I didn't jump ship right away. I told myself I was overreacting, that I'd invested 2 decades into knowing this system and I wasn't about to throw that away over one bad night. So I stayed. And the operating system kept giving me reasons to reconsider. Not long after, an AI assistant got folded directly into the experience, and I mean everywhere. It wasn't a download you chose to grab. It was suddenly living in the taskbar, in the right-click menu, inside the Office suite, inside the browser. It was watching what I typed and offering to finish my sentences. It was scanning documents and suggesting edits I never requested. It was reading through emails and drafting responses on my behalf before I'd even opened them. Some of that processing happened locally, sure, but plenty of it was quietly phoning home to help train whatever model sits behind the curtain. Here's the part that actually got under my skin. There's a switch in the settings that claims to turn the assistant off completely. I flipped it immediately. But when I actually monitored the outbound network traffic with a packet sniffer, watched what my machine was still reaching out to contact, the requests kept flowing. The toggle didn't shut the feature down. It just hid the interface and let the data collection continue underneath. So naturally, I went to war with the telemetry settings. I found a tool built specifically to strip out tracking, dozens of individual switches for advertising identifiers, location logging, diagnostic sharing, cloud suggestions, voice assistant data, all of it. I flipped every single one off. Felt great for about a month. Then a routine update rolled through and quietly reset half of those switches back to their defaults. That's when I understood the pattern. You spend an evening locking everything down, an update arrives, your work gets undone, you lock it down again, another update, reset again. It's a war of attrition. And it's designed so you eventually get tired and stop fighting. Curiosity got the better of me, so I actually read through the privacy documentation line by line instead of scrolling past it like everyone does. The list of what gets collected is staggering. Location data, browsing patterns, voice snippets if you've ever used the built-in assistant, handwriting and typing behavior, app usage patterns, contact information. In some cases, the actual contents of your files depending on which features you have enabled. And most of it falls under a category labeled as necessary for the system to function, meaning you can dial it down, but you can't fully turn it off without breaking something else. The official explanation is always the same. It's for a better experience. It's for smarter features. It's anonymized and secure. But nobody ever asked me if I wanted an AI combing through my personal files. Nobody asked if I wanted my machine reporting home every time I opened an app. I just wanted a tool that let me get work done, and somewhere along the way that tool turned into a data pipeline with a desktop bolted onto the front of it. And then there were the ads. The lock screen ad was annoying enough on its own, but eventually they crept into the start menu, into the settings app itself, into the file browser nudging me toward cloud storage upgrades, into notifications, pushing browser features I never asked about. I want you to sit with that for a second. This wasn't a free product. I paid full price for a legitimate license, and I was still getting advertised like I'd downloaded some ad-supported mobile game. I even tried upgrading to the higher tier professional edition, thinking maybe that version would leave me alone. Same tracking, same forced restarts, same AI baked into everything. The only real difference was I could push updates back a few extra days, and it cost noticeably more for that privilege. If you're finding this useful so far, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe to Nolan Tech. It genuinely helps this channel keep producing deep dives like this one instead of shallow, surface-level tech news. By spring, I was fed up enough to actually start researching a way out, and that's when I bumped into Linux again. Except this time, I gave it a real chance instead of dismissing it on reputation alone. I'll admit my mental image of Linux was stuck somewhere in the early 2000s. Command lines, compiling software from raw source code, manually wrestling with drivers just to get a webcam working. That's the story I'd absorbed from other Windows users who, and this is the part that stung a little, had never actually tried it themselves. So I started watching hours of walkthroughs, reading comparison threads, lurking in community forums, reading through beginner questions, watching people transform their desktops into these gorgeous customized setups with smooth animations and personal touches. What I found genuinely surprised me. The Linux of today is nothing like the Linux people joke about. The interfaces you get with environments like Plasma or GNOME are polished, modern, fluid, and shockingly close to what Windows users are already used to navigating, except with a level of customization Windows simply doesn't offer. You can reshape almost anything, from how the taskbar behaves to animation timing to how transparent windows blur behind them. Installing it turned out to be less painful than installing Windows itself. Boot from a flash drive, choose to try it or install it, click through a handful of simple prompts, pick your language and keyboard layout, set up a username, hit install, done. No product key scavenger hunt, no mandatory account creation that demands an internet connection before you can even reach your own desktop, no lengthy interrogation asking you 11 different ways whether you're absolutely certain you want to disable tracking and advertising and cloud syncing. Choosing which version to actually run felt overwhelming at first because there are genuinely hundreds of options out there. But it quickly became clear that most newcomers gravitate toward a small handful. One is famous for having the largest support community and the most tutorials available anywhere. Another builds on that same foundation, but leans into a layout that feels immediately familiar if you're coming from Windows. There's a version aimed at people who want the newest software the moment it's available. There's one tuned specifically for gaming and creative work. There's a rolling release option for people who never want to wait for a big version jump. And there's one designed to visually mimic a Mac, if that's more your aesthetic. I went with the community favorite option first, simply because if I hit a snag, the odds of finding an answer online were highest. I grabbed the installer file, used a free tool to burn it onto a flash drive, plugged it in, and booted straight into what's called a live environment, meaning I was running the entire operating system without installing a single thing on my hard drive. That alone blew my mind a little. You get to test drive the whole experience. Browse, stream video, poke through settings, check if your hardware behaves, and if you hate it, you just reboot, pull the drive, and you're back exactly where you started like nothing ever happened. I spent a solid couple of hours just wandering through it. I opened a browser and streamed video without a hitch. I opened the included Office suite, built a document, threw together a spreadsheet, mocked up a slide deck. The layout wasn't identical to what I was used to, but it took maybe 10 minutes to feel at home. Audio played correctly, video played correctly. The settings panel was laid out logically enough that I never once felt lost. Then came the part I was genuinely nervous about: hardware. My setup isn't simple. I've got a gaming mouse loaded with extra buttons, a mechanical keyboard with customizable lighting, a dedicated audio interface, a couple of external drives, wireless networking, and Bluetooth headphones. On Windows, half of that stuff required hunting down manufacturer software just to function properly. Here, everything simply worked the instant I plugged it in. The keyboard lighting activated on its own, every extra mouse button responded correctly. The audio interface was recognized immediately, wireless connected without a fight. My headphones paired on the very first attempt. I remember sitting there almost annoyed, because I'd been told for years this would be a nightmare, and instead I was running into fewer hiccups than I regularly dealt with on my old setup. Still, I wasn't fully convinced, because software and gaming are where I expected the whole thing to fall apart. For document work, I traded my usual Office suite for the free open source alternative. And it opened every old file perfectly with barely a learning curve. For video editing, there's a professional grade editor with a native version built for this exact platform. Same story for 3D modeling software, streaming software, and audio editing tools. Most of the creative software I actually rely on day to day already had proper support here. The one genuine sticking point was photo editing software I'd used for over a decade that simply doesn't have an official version. But there's a piece of software that acts as a translation layer, letting a lot of Windows-only programs run as if they were installed natively, and running an older version of that photo editor through it worked flawlessly. No crashes, no weird bugs, just functioning software. Now gaming, the part I assumed would end this whole experiment. I've got a massive library spanning indie titles all the way up to the biggest releases, and I play everything from competitive shooters to sprawling role-playing games. A major gaming platform has spent years pouring resources into making this transition painless, building a compatibility layer that translates game code on the fly, and it performs far better than I expected. Out of my personal library of nearly 300 titles, a huge majority either ran natively or were officially verified to work well, and most of the remainder still ran with just minor tweaks. Only a small slice were completely unplayable, and almost all of those were either games I'd already stopped playing or competitive titles with anti-cheat systems that flatly refused to support anything outside the usual platform. I put my favorites through their paces directly. A massive open-world action game launched and ran without a single configuration step, matching my usual frame rate and arguably running a touch smoother thanks to lighter background overhead. A visually demanding cyberpunk-themed title with advanced lighting features installed its dependencies automatically and actually outperformed the numbers I was pulling on my old setup. A beloved fantasy role-playing game loaded my existing save file without a hitch, and if anything, loaded areas faster than before. A popular competitive shooter ran at a rock-solid frame rate with zero input delay, to the point where nothing about the experience gave away that I wasn't on my usual setup. A couple of anti-cheat protected multiplayer titles refused to run at all, which is disappointing, but ultimately a decision made by those specific developers, rather than a limitation of the platform itself. Meanwhile, a battle royale title that used to be off limits now runs smoothly through a dedicated launcher. And basically every indie game I love loaded up without complaint. Across the board, performance either matched what I was used to or beat it outright, and boot times dropped dramatically on identical hardware. Same graphics card, same processor, same everything. Just a different foundation running underneath it all. Then there's the customization, which honestly might be my favorite part. Windows gives you a light theme, a dark theme, and maybe a splash of accent color if you're feeling adventurous. Here I can restructure practically everything. Move the taskbar anywhere I want. Redesign how windows animate when they open and close, swap out icon packs, fonts, window decorations, visual effects, basically anything you can imagine. I spent an entire weekend just shaping my desktop into something that actually reflects how I like to work, instead of accepting whatever design language a corporation decided everyone should have. That sounds like a small thing until you experience it. For the first time in a long time, my computer genuinely felt like mine. And then privacy, the thing that started this whole journey. On my old setup, keeping tracking under control meant a constant cycle of third-party tools, registry edits, and firewall rules, never fully certain whether it was actually working or whether a future update would quietly open a new backdoor. Here, there simply isn't background tracking unless I go out of my way to turn something on. Nothing is phoning home by default, nothing is scanning my files with an AI model, nothing is logging my typing patterns and shipping them off somewhere. It treats me like the owner of the machine instead of a source of data to be harvested. Updates work the same way. They happen when I decide to run them, not on some corporate schedule I have no say in. I obviously still keep up with security patches because that matters, but the difference is the system asks rather than demands. By that point, I'd tested for weeks, verified my software, verified my games, backed up everything that mattered, and decided to commit fully. I built a fresh installer, this time choosing a version built around that customizable interface I'd fallen for, booted from it, wiped the drive completely, and installed clean. No dual boot, no safety net, no going back. 15 minutes later, I rebooted, pulled the drive, and there it was. My machine, running nothing but this new system, genuinely nerve-wracking and exciting in equal measure. The first day disappeared into customization. I reshaped the taskbar, adjusted animation speeds, set up multiple virtual desktops, tweaked the app launcher, all of it built directly into the settings without needing outside tools or registry hacks. Want the taskbar on the opposite side of the screen? One click. Want windows to have a little bounce when you drag them? Flip a switch. Want a different wallpaper on each virtual desktop? Trivial. I shaped it into exactly what I wanted rather than what a company assumed I'd want. The first week involved relearning some habits. Installing software meant typing a simple command into a terminal or browsing a built-in software center instead of hunting down download links across the internet and hoping I didn't click a fake button laced with malware. Updating everything happened through one or two short commands covering the entire system at once. It felt unfamiliar for about 48 hours, and then it just clicked. And honestly, it felt faster and considerably safer than the old way of doing things. By week 2, I started noticing the performance gains more clearly. Opening the file browser felt instant. Switching between programs felt smoother. Even with a dozen browser tabs open alongside a running game, I had more memory free than I used to have on my old setup running practically nothing. My previous system regularly sat around 80% memory usage, doing basically nothing. Here, under similar conditions, I'm hovering closer to half that. Week 3 brought my first real hiccup. My laser printer wasn't being recognized automatically. I spent about an hour digging through community documentation, found the correct driver package, installed it, and the printer worked perfectly from that point forward. That single hour taught me more about how my own machine actually functions than 2 straight decades on my previous system ever did. And I discovered something else along the way. The community around this software is unusually generous. Ask a question on a forum or in a subreddit, and you get genuine, patient troubleshooting, help within minutes, not condescension, not people telling you to just go back to what you know. A couple of months in, I was measurably more productive than I'd ever been before. No ads interrupting my workflow, no forced restarts eating my progress, no hidden tracking running in the background, no AI quietly rifling through my personal files. Full control over my own machine, and it didn't cost me a cent to get there. Let's tackle the usual objections people throw at this, because I had every single one of them myself. And the learning curve worries people. But if you can navigate Windows, you can navigate this. Most of what you do day to day is still point and click. The terminal exists, but for typical daily use, you barely touch it. And even when you do, it's usually copying one line someone gave you online. Software compatibility worries people too, but that gap has shrunk dramatically. Browsers behave the same. Office tools behave the same. Media playback behaves the same. Development tools often run better. Gaming has become genuinely excellent thanks to that compatibility layer I mentioned earlier. And, for that rare stubborn program with no alternative, the translation layer or a virtual machine usually bridges the gap. Hardware support used to be a fair concern, but in my experience, across 5 separate machines, everything from networking to graphics to audio just worked the moment I booted up, no driver hunting required. Which is ironically more than I can say for my old setup, where I was still tracking down chipset and graphics drivers from manufacturer websites. And the idea that it's too complicated for regular people just doesn't hold up anymore. Installing it is arguably simpler than installing Windows, and daily use is just as approachable as any other system. You only run into real complexity if you go looking for it. I do want to be fair here, because I'm not interested in pretending this is flawless. If your work depends on the full professional creative suite from a certain major software company, there's no official native version, full stop. If your field relies on specialized engineering or architectural software, you might hit a wall. If you're deep into competitive gaming with kernel-level anti-cheat systems, some of those simply won't run, at least not yet. Those are legitimate limitations for a specific slice of users. And there's a mindset shift required too. Your old system holds your hand constantly, sometimes to a fault. This one assumes you're capable of figuring things out, which is usually a strength, but occasionally means doing a bit of your own research when something unusual happens. Though honestly, how many times have you already searched online trying to figure out why your old system was misbehaving? It's the same instinct, just pointed at a system that actually respects you while you do it. What genuinely caught me off guard is that I expected this switch to feel like a trade-off, giving up polish and convenience in exchange for privacy and control. That's not what happened at all. I gained features. My desktop is dramatically more customizable. My workflow runs smoother. My system hasn't crashed once in months. It boots faster, runs faster, uses fewer resources, and respects the choices I make about my own machine. And I got all the privacy and freedom benefits as a bonus on top of that. It wasn't a compromise. It was an upgrade across the board. The financial side is worth mentioning too. A premium license for my old operating system ran around $200. The Office suite added another chunk annually. Cloud storage cost extra. Most of the software I used regularly wasn't free. Here, the operating system costs nothing. The Office suite is free. The video editor is free. The 3D software is free. Nearly everything I use daily is free and openly available. I've already saved a meaningful amount of money simply by not paying for subscriptions I no longer need. Step back and really think about the whole arrangement for a second. You pay for an operating system, then you get shown ads inside the operating system you already paid for. Then your usage patterns get collected to help train AI systems that eventually get sold back to you as a paid feature. Then updates get forced onto your machine on someone else's schedule, sometimes breaking things you relied on. Then features you liked disappear and features you never asked for show up in their place. And if you push back, the answer is usually some version of deal with it. None of that happens here. This software treats you like an adult, hands you the tools, and steps out of the way. It doesn't assume you're incapable of managing your own machine. It isn't trying to monetize your attention. It isn't watching over your shoulder. It works for you instead of working for someone else's quarterly earnings report. I'm not going to pretend this is a perfect system because no system is, but it respects me in a way my old one quietly stopped doing a long time ago. And with AI assistants and cloud services and subscription models and tracking getting pushed deeper and deeper into every corner of mainstream computing, that respect matters more now than it ever has. So why did I actually walk away from a system I'd used my entire adult life? Because I wanted to actually own the computer sitting on my desk instead of feeling like I was renting it from a corporation. Because I wanted privacy that was real instead of privacy that was one setting's reset away from disappearing. Because I wanted a system built to work for me rather than around me. And I got exactly that, along with better performance, better stability, zero cost, and a community that actually wants to see you succeed. Am I telling you to abandon what you're using right now? Not necessarily. If it's working for you and you're genuinely happy, there's no reason to change a thing. But if you're tired of forced restarts, tired of ads, inside software you already paid for, uneasy about what's being collected behind the scenes, or just curious whether there's something better out there, it costs you nothing to find out. Grab a live version, boot it from a flash drive without touching your existing setup, and spend an hour exploring. You might be surprised by what you find, the same way I was. If this video actually helped you understand what's going on, do me a favor, like it, subscribe to Nolan Tech, and turn those notifications on so you don't miss what we cover next. And I'm genuinely curious, if you decided to try something new on your own computer today, what's the very first setting you'd change the moment you got in?